See the big road. Beech forests have grown on this bit sometime?
Oh, I doubt it. I think this is more likely to have been washed down the stream in a flood. Quite a bit of deer tracking here. And also some of those sedges have been cropped quite hard, obviously by deer.
Fiordland was combed by early prospectors. One of them reported having to fight 7 demons here. Sandflies, mosquitoes, beach itch, cascade boils, blowflies, storms and dense bush. Well, we're through to Caswell Sound without the cascade boils or beach itch. And on this last beautiful day on the track, there are no demons in Fiordland.
That's all right. Clean water. See you later. Okay.
The float plane finally located us, and by now Brian will be home in Christchurch. I, however, am still some way from journey's end and a hot bath. The rats, with whom I shared the castaway hut, made me realise that although Fiordland appears to be as it's always been, things are really quite changed here. Only the tough native animals like wekas are the inheritors of these fjords. This, after all, is what drove Richard Henry to spend 14 years in Dusky Sound. During his explorations, he'd seen introduced predators like stoats and rats killing native birds in the remotest parts of Fiordland, and he felt he must do something. With the help of assistants who came and went over the years, and his dog, he attempted to save Fiordland's ground birds, most at risk from predators. He failed. First because, after ferrying hundreds of kakapo and kiwis to a safe island, he found that stoats had swum there too. And because many other birds had been shot for museum display. So this wilderness is a cemetery for species like whikau, the laughing owl, and the moa. At least one was seen by a European. And it's become a living museum for takahe and kakapo, and maybe soon for the yellowhead and the blue duck. There are also tales of a lost tribe and of strange animals like otters and moose in these remote fjords. Sound is in comfort aboard the park vessel Renoun, skipper Lance Shaw.
Probably soft because I've actually lost the sounding at 260 fathoms, which incidentally is deeper than it shows on the chart. But it's just run right off there onto soft bottom probably because now I'm not getting an echo at all. So we can only assume it's somewhere in excess of 260 fathoms. That's about round figures 455 metres or something like that. Which doesn't mean much looking over there. You're not going to see it there. But you know, if you look up the top. You know, on the hills over here, perhaps. Yeah. It's about halfway to bushline. Really, it's you know, that's in round figures. Yeah, yeah.
In the deepest part of Caswell Sound, which should be Caswell Fjord, the main glacier was joined by another from a side valley, and together they dug deeper and wider. The charts carried aboard Renoun are from the very first survey made by Captain John L. Stoke of Her Majesty's steamship Acheron. During the Acheron's long voyage, he charted parts of Australia as well. At that time, the Sound and many of its features were named Dog Point because the ship's dog took to climbing trees after birds. But the origin of Marble Basin was not from the Acheron survey, but because marble was to be found here, and also in several other places. But here it was close to the water, so it could be mined and transported easily. Peter Brotherston gave me a tour of the operations of the Caswell Sound Marble Company, incorporated 1881, abandoned 1887. The problem was not so much Fiordland. By the look of the camp, the workers were more than adequately housed and provided for. The problem rather seems to have been with the marble itself.
It's pretty fragmented looking marble here, isn't it, Pete?
Yeah, that's pretty crumbly.
That's probably why they went higher up above this to to the real quarry because it's probably a better quality rock.
The prospect had been promising, the samples of good quality. But once they tried to extract commercial quantities, they found it had too many fractures, and no Caswell Sound marble ever left the landscape in which it was formed. The Renoun's crew collect information on crayfish numbers as part of their work, and this provided an unexpected chance for a dive. Near the entrance to the fjord, the bottom becomes much shallower. This was the end of the glacier's icy dominion, where its power to dig out vast quantities of rock was lost. At about 7 meters, we bagged a curious device which was bolted to the seabed. Once aboard and debagged, these objects reveal themselves to be a series of parallel plates which attract the small fish that normally lurk under rocks or in crevices. The purpose of regularly stripping these collectors is to monitor the crayfish stocks in the fjords. Among the species to emerge was the juvenile cray, 25 millimeters long and just out of its larval stage. Further back into the fjord, we also dived down its deep vertical side. At first, ascending through a freshwater layer stained the colour of tea without milk. Fiordland rain flowing off the peaty hills produces this layer. 3 meters below, the seawater was warm and clear. Clinging to walls of ancient rock were one of the most primitive creatures in the world. White sea urchins fed among brachiopods, whose shells are similar to those found in 500-million-year-old fossil beds. The prickly jock stewarts, or sea perch, were our guides to this clear and strange underworld. The gloom above is possibly why species like the circular sawshell, which normally live in deeper water, feed just 4 meters from the surface. Another influence on sea life is the warm Tasman current, which bathes the coast. Ecological weed and several fish species found here would normally find water at latitude 45 far too cold. But the most special effect here is produced by the murky layer of fresh water at the surface. Species like black coral, that everywhere else are dark water dwellers at crushing depths, are growing as shallow as 10 meters. And snake stars curled in the branches of these beautiful tree corals. I naturally expected black coral to be black as per label, but it seems to be covered with a white skin, and the feeding polyps are white too. Red one, elsewhere known only from depths greater than 100 meters. Here, they grew at less than 40. But the highlight of the dive was meeting a creature that defies definition. When I touched the sea pen, it withdrew like one animal with a nervous system. Yet in its branches live a colony of smaller creatures, the feeding polyps. These colony individuals, called sea pens, were dipped in a sandy ledge at our maximum depth of 40 meters, 1/4 of the way to the bottom. Weka. I was wondering what animal was going to be keeping me company on this last part of the journey besides the black flies. I thought it might have been the little Fiordland skink which scurries around the beaches on the far west coast, but if the Weka's on the island, it's probably unlikely.